Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Chaffardini, and I'm sitting with director Martin Krejcí. We're here at the 2019 Fantastic Fest, and we're about to talk about the true adventures of Wolfboy. Martin, thank you so much for coming to Fantastic Fest.
Thank you very much for having me.
Martin's a little jet lagged, and I kind of had an all-nighter, so I think we're going to have a very fun interview. We are two guys with difficult last names, so this should be a lot of fun. Martin, let's clear some things right off the top. True Adventures of Wolfboy, and the subtext in the credits said this is a work of fiction. So how do you respond to that?
Well, because the true adventures are always something which happens inside, and it is fictional in a way. So I would say that the real or the true adventure we are all experiencing is something which can be fictional because it doesn't have to necessarily happen in reality.
Gotcha. Well, I have to say, I did not expect to like this movie as much as I did. I didn't know anything going into this, and I felt there was a lot of heart, a lot of warmth, a lot of once you get to know these characters, this becomes a very gripping. It was a fairy tale. So, can you speak to how you wanted to make this? The heart that you put into this.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. The script written by Olivia was very exceptional on many levels for me, obviously. One of them was that each character was very distinctive. So unlike with other scripts where you can read the voice of the author talking through each character, in here I felt like this whole the whole assemblance of the characters was real, and each of them was individual, and therefore they create this colorful palette of which reflects the world we all live in. And what I would say is an important thing is that the story of Paul Wolfboy is not a story of an outsider who is learning how to live in the world. What I loved and what I gravitated to was that it's about him realizing that it's not just him who is different because of his affair, but through the Odyssey he accomplished, or he goes on, he learns that everyone around him is different and is outsider in our way, which is exactly how I feel, and that's why I found myself in the story and in the film, and that's why I knew how to approach it and how to do it. And of course people may not like it, or some people may not like it, some hopefully people do with the heart, let's say. But I guess that's what makes it a little different from movies of that similar genre, is that it is really about realization that we are all outsiders, because there isn't such a thing like norm, unless someone says that he knows the norm and he dictates it, and then yes. But when you look at it from humanistic point of view, we are all different, and my hair and my fur could be my accent and my cultural differences, but yours might be something different, and we are all in this together, and we have to survive, and we will survive only if we'll be nice to each other in a way. So that's what I guess is the message.
Yeah, there was a line towards the end of the movie where it said, I'm paraphrasing, the world is tough enough, why make it tough on ourselves? And it does, it takes these characters and places them in kind of a fairy tale setting, but yeah, there's a real truth to what they're going through, and like you said, it defies the idea of what's normal, and it just kind of proves that we're all, here just trying to make it the best lives for ourselves.
Yes, exactly. And this line particularly is something which I remember when I read that scene in the script. That was my hook in, because I really felt like that sums up the whole idea in a very clever way, and because of the context of that scene, it's also kind of lighthearted, which I like as well. That the whole film is not taking itself too seriously, and the whole stylization and kind of weirdness and quirkiness is something which I found very intriguing and attractive, because only then I believe you can say something meaningful, when you're not trying to say with all the heaviness and seriousness, because everything has two sides. Like I guess. I mean, if it makes sense.
Oh, sure. Well, the film stars Jaeden Martell as Paul. It stars kids, but it's not really a kid's story. And Paul is at a turning point in his life. Is there a correlation or a coincidence that he's turning 13 just when you're expected to become something else and his life goes completely different in those teenage years?
Yeah, well, we've discussed that a lot. We didn't want it to be like a typical teenager movie, because at that age when you're revolting against whatever, like the paradigms you lived in, and then you want to get it on your own, and that comes with the whole age thing. That would lead the story somewhere else, and at the same time we didn't want it to be too much of a lost kid story, so that kind of age where you're about to get into teenage years was interesting, and I guess yes, it is an open gate to a teenage part of life where you start to learn about, and you get the knowledge of who you are, who you want to be, and the self-realization. But it's not like if he was 15, for example, and then there is a big difference between that age, I guess, and yeah. So
Well, the kids deal with some very heavy material. I wouldn't call it dark, or just heavy. How did they respond to it, kind of reading the script and having the table reads, or just being on set?
well, that's funny. I mean, I'm coming from East Europe, and trust me, this is not heavy comparing to where I'm from. So even though there were some discussions about drinking and stuff, to me that's the part of the title. Adventures is that's what it is, and so it didn't occur to me as if it was as if there was any issue with that. And of course the whole film has, to a certain degree, a stylized kind of form, and the world where it's taking place is really, it is our world, but seen through the experience of Paul, so it gives it that little twist. So that's why I didn't look at it as if we are reflecting the reality those kids live in, or we live in, to a degree where this would be an issue, if you know what I mean. If you do something, and at the same time we didn't want to be outrageously somehow scandalous, or to do anything over the top or too much on the nose in terms of going into, or put those kids into dark and heavy corners of life. That's definitely was. I think it really was just part of the experiencing and experimenting with life, basically.
Well, I have to say that the film was anchored by, in my opinion, some icons of the independent film market. You have Chris Messina, who is fantastic. You have John Turturro, and even Chloe Sevigny. What about them and their personas made them right for the roles?
Oh, well, first, their willingness to participate. But it's now when I look at it back, I just can't believe it really happened, because John Turturro was my hero always. Chloe Sevigny and Chris Messina. I've learned so much from him particularly, because thanks to him I've learned how to take each how to create a character in the movie before you're doing it, because he came with an idea that we will treat each take slightly differently, which I realized how much it helped me in the edit room, because then we can trim the level of his parenthood to a level which I didn't assume in the beginning, like whether he is like brutal and just hopeless, or whether he's overly sensitive. There would be two extremes, but because he gave us various levels of that in between for each take, and he was so precise and really amazing that it helped. We could do whatever we wanted with him as a character in terms of those levels, obviously within the script. With John, it was just it was like I felt like a grateful student, if I can put it this way, because I really I do have few things he told me which I will remember forever in terms of the approach, but also he 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 is very intense and charismatic, but because of the level of quality and the volume of his experiences, he really can navigate and help to some directors like me myself, I guess, to kind of maneuver with the character the way that it kind of really works effectively. What I mean is that when we had in any kind of or I was trying to approach it from different angle, he was reading it before I was able to explain myself, like I'm doing now. Like if he was here, he would know better what I want to say before I said it, because he has experienced this before. So that was helpful, and with all of them, to be honest, it was just great experience. And finally, I guess that this type of movie you don't take for money or for credit. So it really was just about the character, and that's so refreshing and liberating to talk about who that person is, and to hear an opinion from actors of that caliber is just amazing. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, one of the threads that goes through the movie is it's a road trip movie. Highs and lows, good and bad decisions made. What kind of road trips inspired you or came from the script based on what Olivia had written?
Well, just the fact that it's a road trip, because you wouldn't read it necessarily from the script itself. It was, whenever we spoke about it with Olivia, it was more like an odyssey, the journey itself, and which in essence is exactly as you said. And I do like that kind of notion, or that kind of package, or not package, but the tone. I hesitate to call it a genre, even though it is a genre. But the reason why I like it is that it gives you richness and clear developments, because and richness in terms of a lot can happen and it still makes sense, and it's and the sense of motion also is important through the scenes and through the story itself. And I really do like it in every movies, basically. And but that the funny thing. Oh, funny thing is that when you mentioned it, because nobody, thus far as I spoke to people, have read it exactly as a road movie, because it has aspects of that which were really important. And for me, it was like a weird mixture of road movie and musical, because the music element plays important role there as well, in terms of setting the tone, and for me to define certain elements which are typical for road trip or road movies, as well as musicals, where just like a little sprinkles I wanted to drop in, just in order to enhance certain quirkiness of the whole film itself, if it makes sense.
No, 100%. And one of the ways you did that is in montage sequences, or there were chapter breaks, which kind of gave you little volumes of the story. But going through the montages, you had characters singing their way through. So John Turturro was in a car singing, Rose was singing. So what about those scenes went into crafting those? And
I mean, that's exactly what we've kind of defined three songs. So we have Aristiana song, we have Mr. Silk song, and we have the, let's say, happy song or robbery song, which is Rose. Paul doesn't have his song. He has his own theme throughout the movie. So it is something which we structured in the beginning, and then the songs stay there. And I think subconsciously it kind of helps to enhance the richness and give you a certain feeling of structure without it being on the nose. But yeah, I mean, I do like those things which are a bit strange and weird and unexpected, like I don't know. I remember when I first saw Magnolia and that they started to sing. I just thought it's one of the greatest scenes I've seen. Only because, but of course not for itself, but because it kind of it adds a layer to the film. And I didn't mean it, or I didn't mention it as if I wanted to copy anything like that. But I wanted to define the style of this film in a way which is not misleading. So it wouldn't make you, when you watch it, it wouldn't go like, okay, it's a version of Tim Burton or it's a version of Terry Gilliam, because it could be this way, definitely. It could be a fairy tale or fantastical fairy tale. On the other hand, we have very special and peculiar characters, especially Mr. Silk. So we needed to create a tone or a flavor of the film which would be real, but still with some kind of twist to it. And to have songs in it was something which I thought was a good tool to play with.
Well, as I said before, this film has a lot of heart, and the story takes a turn at a point in the movie, and it just kind of hits you in the heart, and it kind of speaks to what these characters are going through and how everybody really feels something. I'm glad I saw this movie. I guess that's what I'm trying to go with this. But to wrap up this interview, I don't know if this is a fun question or more of just like a geeky technical question. You know how when you shoot on location or you shoot a set or something, talk to me about the logistics of a carnival burning. Did you repair an old carnival and then burn it, or did you take what went into that, and how much destruction did you need to do?
It was a nightmare, actually. I think actually some parts of the carnival were shot aftermath before we built it, because we had an amazing production designer, Aaron Osborne. And this is like a dream for production designer, to build a carnival and burn it down. That's perfect. That's what you want to do. And so we've rented few existing attractions, and then we've built a few of them, and then we burned down the ones we've built, and then we dressed as if burned down the one we rented. And of course, it's about angles, and so that's how we put the ones we were burning down in front. For example, Dragon's Dilemma, which is the main thing. It's we build the fence with the dragon's head around the normal existing attraction, and then with my long-time collaborator Tom Sparks, who is like a VFX wizard. He took stills and then he changed it in post. So there was a mixture of real stuff burned down, and then for example, the carousel. Those horses are still the ones which were there. It's just that you put melted wax on top of them, really? And it starts to look like they've burned down. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad I asked. Martin, welcome again. Welcome to Fantastic Fest. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Jeez.